Hello and welcome to the latest Wild West interview. Today we're talking with John Adams, aka John Law. You might know him from Banana Fish Zero, or you might know him from the Statues of Liberty, or the X's, and then recently he's made a series of films, all through Wonder Wheel Productions, I believe, and the most recent being The Deeper You Dig, which has gotten some recognition. Anyway, we have John Law here today, and hopefully you'll stick around and check it out. Thank you. All right, so thank you for doing this finally. I know it took me forever to get things in order, but here we are.
That's how it works.
Let's start with where I first encountered you when you were in Banana Fish Zero. A little history about Banana Fish Zero to start with, I guess.
Yeah, so Banana Fish Zero was like that was my band. That was my real. It started out with 4 people. So there was Banana Fish Zero went through a bunch of transitions before it really became what it was. And I would say Banana Fish Zero really was Prince Hal, Texas, and me. And so we went through some transitions. Even at one point, my brother was in the band with me. He was terrific. There was a guy named Jason who played drums. My great friend Andrew played stand-up bass. And but what happened was, I really wanted to play more heavy stuff, more distorted stuff. I wanted to basically be more of a party punk band. I think I was headed that direction. And when I hooked up with Prince Hal, when our first bass player left, he went on tour with Radiohead as a warm-up band for Radiohead. I asked Prince Hal, who was always at all of our shows, hey, dude, because him and I grew up together, and he'd always played bass. I said, you've been playing your bass? He's like, yeah, let's be in the band together. So Prince Hal joined the band, and that really changed everything because Prince Hal's energy was just so beautiful and magic and completely out of control and exactly where I wanted to be. And once we joined, we really found a lot of where we were headed because he brought that kind of comical and fun and total punk rock attitude. The drummer that I had left, I think probably partly because things were we were really starting to play out a lot. We were starting to tour a lot, and he wasn't into it. And we found Texas. And when we found Texas, the whole band came together like wow, like gasoline and matches. And it was a lot of fun. We really found what we wanted to do, which was we wanted to celebrate madness. And that's what Banana Fish Zero did really well, is we celebrated madness in a fun way, and people enjoyed it. And we built up a really nice crowd on the East Coast in lots of different cities. We slept on a lot of floors, crashed a lot of cars, and made a lot of wonderful friends, and basically became a party punk band. And we rode super hard, and the best way to describe it is we were a train wreck waiting to stop happening. And ultimately, because of drugs and alcohol and total madness, Banana Fish Zero came to a fiery end. And it was great.
The madness caught up with you.
Yeah, you can't burn that hot. I mean, we couldn't. We just burned up. We were like, you throw gas, you throw a fire. I mean, you throw a match in a can of gasoline, and it's really fun. And it explodes, and lots of cool things happen, and smoke and fire and sparks, and people get burned, and it's hilarious. And then the fire burns out, and you're left with a scorched tan. So we were scorched tan at the end, and I had developed a wicked drug habit, and so it was time for me to clean up my act. I have a family that I really love, and it was just out of control, and so I had to quit. And Banana Fish just went down too. It all just went down in a fiery wreck. It was awesome. I mean, it was really beautiful.
Did everybody have their habits, or that was largely you, or
Well, I'll only speak for myself, because everybody's got their own story to tell. I'm going to tell my story, and it's it was ferocious. fucking awesome.
but not going to repeat it.
Yeah, no, I mean, no. It's the day I stopped. I never want to do that again.
Yeah. And so after Banana Fish Zero, basically drugs were done. They moved on. Next story.
Yeah. So what happened then was so I really I loved doing music, and so I just started writing. One of the things that had happened because of drugs and alcohol is I kind of had lost I feel like I had lost like some of my dreams and my creativity. And so by quitting everything, I really found my dreams, and I found my creativity again, and I started writing songs just relentlessly. And I hooked up with a guy named Brett Scallions, who also was going through a transition at that time, and we formed a band called the X's, and that was an amazing experience because it was kind of the opposite of Banana Fish Zero. It was all professionals writing complicated, wonderful, well-produced, extremely well thought out music. We toured around, got paid, played on big stages, had also a magic time, but in a completely different way. It was much more business, which was cool for me because I needed a different viewpoint, and the X's really supplied that. And the other guys were, top-notch pros, and so that was really fun.
Yeah, talking about the X's, it's unfortunate. I just have to mention that it's unfortunate Chris passed away last week, I believe, right?
Yeah. So Cupcake just died a week ago of a heart attack, and he was an amazing. Everybody knows his guitar ability was above and beyond anything I had ever and have ever seen. He was a pleasure. He was a pleasure to watch. My God. Yeah, no, he's a fucking incredible player, and was really good at filling out songs that I had written and bringing like some great edge to them. And he loved playing leads, and he loved production, and he was a consummate professional.
Yeah, the attention to detail in that band was very focused. Almost intentional. It was intentional or calculated, and very a very cool band, but very different from Banana Fish Zero.
Absolutely. So different. They were two different worlds. One was total madness, and one was total professionalism. And both of them were really, really, really fun. Just great times. Each of them was a magic place in my life. And I got to see things with the X's that I couldn't see with Banana Fish Zero, and vice versa. Banana Fish Zero showed me things that the X's, just would never see because we were skating through the mud and the blood, and with the X's we were not skating through the mud and the blood.
Two very different perspectives. I remember though when the first shows you were doing with the X's, you would get up on stage and you would be like, they don't want me to play guitar, but screw it, I'm playing.
Yeah, no, those guys they were all much better musicians than me. I would think different, they're pros. I don't love polished music, I like polished music, but I'm not a big lover of polished music. I like ratty stuff a lot better. I like loose stuff. I like danger and that kind of thing. But I did sure enjoy the X's. But I have to say, I really miss Prince Hal. And so when the X's were done, the X's also kind of came to a place where I think, we all really helped each other out in seeing what we all wanted out of music and out of life. It was 2 years together that were incredibly helpful. I can speak for myself again, to me. And what I realized I wanted to be with Prince Hal, writing the kind of music that him and I had grown up together writing, and I wanted to be back in the mud and the blood where I kind of belonged. I could tell that I didn't belong on those bigger stages in that polished world.
there's a certain pleasure in doing what you're purely passion, as opposed without the demands of the technology and the logic of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a beautiful thing, and some people are really good at it, and it was a great lesson to me. It taught me that I just don't belong there. Mm-hmm. It's not where I belong, and it's good to know where you don't belong. As much as you like it, or as much as you wanted to see whether you belong there, it's also good to know that where you don't belong. And the other three guys also found their way and where they belong. And I think we all helped each other do that in a really kind of beautiful way. And it was really a great thing in my life. And the music, I mean, some of the music that the X's put out is just, incredible,
And you were, for both the projects, you were writing the lyrics, right?
Yes. I think Chris wrote a song, The Devil's Son, the lyrics and the entire song. He came in and showed it to us, and it was so good. It was like, well, don't got to do anything to that. But other than that, I wrote the lyrics. Like, I don't think anybody else wrote any lyrics for the X's. So, lyrics are fun.
Well,
and it was fun to write over that kind of music. It was Brett really pushed me a lot to write more intellectual stuff than I had been writing, and that was quite fun. And he pushed me really hard. He also pushed me to take voice lessons, and
really,
and it was cool. I was into it. I was like, you know what, I'm up to trying this whole thing, this world. I'm going to try this world, and I'm not going to try it like some half-assed slob. I'm going to fucking do it. So it was really cool. He pushed me really hard, and it was great.
Because he comes from, he had some serious history behind him. Because he was.
Well, his band was Fuel.
Yeah.
And Fuel was a top-notch #1 hit radio station band. Who toured all over the world, played with Aerosmith, and were famous.
Yeah.
And so he showed me a lot of things that I could never have seen, and I showed him stuff that he I think admired. And so it was a great relationship, and I think it did us both a lot of good.
It's an interesting relationship, but in some respect, are you still in touch with him, or?
Oh yeah, Brett is, he's the nicest person on the planet. He's just a really genuine guy. He's a Southern man, He's got a loyalty, and he's just incredibly nice. Doesn't hold a grudge.
Yeah.
And we've always been good friends from day one, and still are.
Because the question, I guess, and this is more of him, and you probably can't answer, but how, he was the front man for Fuel, and he had that success, and he came and was playing bass for the X's, right?
Yeah, I think Brett wanted to play music. He needed to change up, and he didn't want the spotlight. I think Brett had a lot of thoughts and thinking that he had to get through, and the X's were a perfect opportunity for him to do that because he wasn't sitting up in front. Yeah. And I think sometimes it was hard because people would come to see the X's, and they, very occasionally someone would, yell out, "Come on, Brett, sing Shimmer."
Mm-hmm.
And but the nice thing was he could hide in the X's and play bass and write insane bass lines and play a huge part in songwriting and production, and I think he really loved it, and I know he did. And I think it was a great, again, he was going through a huge transition, leaving this massively big band,
Yeah,
and
got out of, another thing that got out of control and lost control of.
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for exactly what went on with those guys, because I don't know anything about them or their history, but I do know that the X's were a good stepping stone for Brett to step into his own world, and now he does sing, and he has his own band, and he plays with the Doors, and so I mean, it all worked out really well for him.
Yeah, let's get back. We're talking. That's an interview for Brett. But going back to that's some interesting stuff as far as the differences between those two bands. And before Banana Fish Zero, were you musical at all, or what were you? What was your history before? Go before.
Yeah.
Let's go back a couple steps.
I mean, I had been playing music since high school, but I didn't learn instruments until I got to college, and I got kicked out of every band I was in. I was always the singer of the band. I always wanted to do hardcore punk, and it was hard to get good hardcore punk, and so I was always in these bands that kicked me out because they wanted to play, like, I don't know, 80s big rock or something like that, or they wanted to play emo, or like they wanted to play like The Cure or whatever, and I wasn't having any of that. And so I got kicked out of a ton of bands until finally I picked up a bass and started playing and just started my own band. So in college I had a couple bands. None of them, went very far, but they taught me a lot of things, and I met a lot of people. But it wasn't really until New York so after college I was a model, and I traveled around the world, and I could finally afford, good equipment and, a place to live and things like that. So it wasn't until 1990, I think 91, when I really started bands that were playing out. And
wow.
That was Banana Fish. I started Banana Fish, and that was that.
And when did Prince Hal arrive into that world?
Prince Hal
roughly
arrived maybe 96.
All right. So you've been at it for a while, and so there was some exploration before he, and you had
actually.
What?
I should correct that. Probably 93 is when Banana. Wait, let me think. No, 94. 94 Banana Fish starts. Because while I was a model, I couldn't do a band because I was traveling all over the place. And I was like in Milan or in Paris or wherever doing so there was no band. I was always playing by myself, writing a ton of songs. Is how that went. And then in 94 or 93, I started Banana Fish. And so 93, and then in 94, Banana Fish played for a year, and then I got cancer, and so that stopped that for another year because I was doing chemo and radiation and was completely fucked out of my mind, so there was nothing going on there. And then when that was over, I restarted the band and played for 2 years until Prince Hal joined it.
Yeah, so you do the college, and then you what did you study anyway?
I was a comparative religion major. So it was great. I studied all the religions, but I had an emphasis on Eastern religions, like Buddhism.
All right.
And I was wonderful, and I went to the University of Washington out in Seattle, and while I was there, it was 1986 until 1991, I was, so I was there for the whole grunge thing. I saw Nirvana play in, actually, our school auditorium. I saw Mudhoney, I saw Soundgarden, Jane's Addiction, Mother Love Bone, every single one of those bands, and it was interesting.
As they were starting.
When they were starting, when they were nobody, and so that was really, really fucking fun. I remember, they called it dirge, not grunge at the time. At least that's what I always heard. They was like, oh, they're all dirge bands, and I was like, oh, cool. And then it became, I don't know, somebody coined the phrase grunge. But what was cool about getting into the Seattle scene is I had just come from the hardcore punk scene in New York, and it was like when I got there, I was looking for punk bands, and I went to a record store. I was like, who are the fun punk bands? And somebody said, oh, Green River, and then Green River, but they were broken up. So somebody mentioned Soundgarden, and so I went and watched Soundgarden, and that's how I kind of got into it. I went from listening to bands like Murphy's Law and the Cro-Mags and Agnostic Front and Bad Brains and Circle Jerks and Black Flag to going out to Seattle and finding Soundgarden and that whole movement. And it was cool.
And were you a big Cro-Mags fan as you were coming from the city, or?
No, I was actually more of a California hardcore guy. Like I was a huge Black Flag fan, and I really liked bands like Black Flag. I liked Circle Jerks. I really liked Suicidal Tendencies, and the California hardcore scene was a little less kind of gang-like. think that, New York was cool because, there was a lot of ass kicking and crazy shit going on. But at the same time, that was also like, it could get a little bit repetitive, like all the fights and the...
Yeah, programs were very intense.
It is what it is. And I kind of was more into, I liked it. Sorry, I got a cough.
Yep, no problem.
I kind of like, what I liked about the California bands is there was a little bit more inclusivity and a little more intellectual, and they were also spreading their wings a little more. Like a band like Black Flag went from hardcore singing Gimme, Gimme, Gimme to putting out My War and basically inventing grunge, as far as I'm concerned. Like, side B of My War, to me, is the blueprint for grunge.
And somehow you went from that world into modeling.
Yeah, just because of money. I was in San Francisco and I was broke, and I was a bartender, and I really didn't have any money, and somebody suggested I see if I could model, make it, they were like, you might be able to model and make some quick money, and so I tried it, and it just like was crazy because in 3 months I was in Paris, and it just took me by surprise, and it was insanely lucky and really wonderful, and I was just so lucky,
And before you did the modeling, so you completed a degree in comparative theology, I guess, or
well, comparative religion. It's really called comparative religion because I wasn't really studying like a particular theology. I was studying the religions and their texts and the difference in each of them.
Understood. Sorry, but what was the plan as far as you did that just out of your interest and curiosity? What was the next? Did you have a plan, or what was the idea? Or?
No, I had zero plan. I never had a plan. I didn't want a plan. People were like, what are you doing with religion? What are you going to do like with a comparative religion major? And my answer was, I don't know. I didn't have a plan. I didn't want a plan. And I still don't have a plan.
Yeah, as kind of like, I did the same thing with philosophy. But it worked.
Wait, you were a philosophy major?
Yeah, that's where I went to Rutgers and did my philosophy thing, and I did that while I was, trying to make some music, and ultimately I said, I got to finish this degree and go on to something else. And then, but ended up starting a family and becoming a recruiter. So, nothing as glamorous as modeling, but it worked.
Well, yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's the thing. It's, it just takes you where it takes you. I think that's what college was for me. I just wanted to study what I was interested in. I didn't really give a shit about a job.
Yep. No, I did not want to find I wasn't going to become an engineer. No. That's just interesting. That from comparative theology or comparative religion, to the punk bands that you're listing and the grunge, and then on to fashion and Milan and so forth. That's just the.
It was so lucky. Like basically, I knew I was lucky. I'm a kid from upstate New York who's just a regular person with a regular life, and next thing you know, I'm in Paris. Living.
And you just went to an agency and they said, "Hey, this works for you. Can you do this?"
Well, kind of. I mean, I had to kind of jump through a couple hoops. I had to get pictures. I had to go to castings. I had to kind of make a book. I had to kind of invest a little money at the time, which for me was a lot. I probably invested, I don't know, $1,000 in pictures and books, and buy a fucking shirt that looks good, and I had to go to castings, and it was very weird, but I did it, and I was one of the lucky guys. What happens is the agents from all over the world, they would go through cities, and at that time I was in San Francisco, and they'd look on the board of the models, and they'd pick guys. They'd be like, oh, we'd like this guy to come to Paris to do the shows. And that's how it works. Like, basically, the French agencies go around the world. They kind of pick like 20 guys they want from around the world to come do the shows, and then you go and you do castings for like Pierre Cardin and Kenzo and Armani or Versace or all these people. You do these castings. If they like you, they put you in the show, and then if they like you in the show, they put you in their campaign. So there's a bunch of steps that you've got to get through to be a model, and so it's very lucky, you know. And I was super lucky. I just really super lucky.
Yep, the look that they were looking for, you happen to have at that moment.
Yep.
The necessary things to have it, and on you went.
Yeah, and so I got what got me kind of famous in that world was I got the Armani campaign, and when you get the Armani campaign, you kind of go worldwide, and that was and that changed everything. So as soon as you Armani campaign, now you're doing Macy's and Bloomingdale's and you know, Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein, and like so you do the Armani campaign and everybody wants you. Suddenly, I went from, you know, kind of being hungry in Milan and Paris, but working, but, you know, just kind of more surviving, to Armani picks me for his campaign, and then everything changed. Like, then suddenly I was living on an airplane, and I knew I was super lucky. Like, I never said to myself, like, oh, wow, I deserve this. Like, I knew that I was, you know, your looks are just lucky, and I was lucky that it all worked out for me. But, you know, I had the luck, my luck ran out because at the height of my career, I was working with Kate Moss. I was Calvin Klein's fit model. I was just about to do this big perfume campaign with her, and we were shooting with her, and I found out that I had cancer. That kind of took, that was that. Like, you don't model when you're bald and you don't have eyebrows. You lose 30 pounds.
Yep. Yeah, you know, and you know, that was in the 90s, and they just didn't have a lot of the treatment, so, you know.
Right. No, I mean, you're right. It was in the 90s, and I, in the treatments that we you know, the people like me went through were fucking awesome, like medieval awesome. And
scary awesome.
And this makes it even more fun. Was, you know, I was a young guy. I was 25 years old. So I didn't have health insurance. All the money that I made, I had to go broke in order to get into a clinic. So I lost all my money. I lost my apartment. I had to sell all my shit. It was so that I could go to a clinic at Mount Sinai, because you have to be broke to go to a clinic. You know what I'm saying? Because I didn't have insurance, so I had to be a part of basically a study. So I had to. Basically, I lost all my money, I went broke, and then I was in this clinic in Mount Sinai, and I had this amazing Kathy who fucking saved my ass. And, you know, I did chemo and radiation for a year, and, you know, lost all my hair, lost a ton of weight, puked, you know, for a year. You know, just bled out. It was crazy, but I wouldn't change it for the world, because it made me love life so much, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I imagine going through that and then coming out and surviving that
was again the luckiest thing in the world. And, you know, I knew, holy shit, life is good.
You know, so you survive. You do the modeling. You survive that situation, and then you start putting Banana Fish Zero together, Prince Howell Rock.
Yeah.
I guess I'm looking for confirmation of this, or maybe you'll say, no, that's not really the way it played out. But when I kind of disappeared from music, and I wasn't really paying attention until around 2003 again. And that's, you know, I won't go into how that came about, but I found the New York scene around 2003, and I found that Radical Records compilation, which they had done, and Sex Slaves, and Queen Bee, and Banana Fish Zero, and a bunch of others were on there, and it just looked like there was a shitload of bands and stuff going on around 2001, 2002, you know, and you were a part of that. Any recollections of that general vibe, or that wasn't real? Or
it was very real. It was a real moment you know, it seemed to me in New York rock and roll, I mean, the clubs were packed. We were all very good friends. We were touring around together. Steve Blush had put together that Radical Records, that Radical Records album. People like you were booking us out in Yonkers and all over the place. And, you know, we went out and did California, and there was an amazingly cool, cohesive, wicked New York rock and roll scene, and it was an interesting scene too. I mean, it was like, it wasn't punk, it wasn't metal. It was like it was very rock and roll, you know, and it was super magic. I mean, I made a lot of great friends, and there were some stunning bands. You know, it was a great time. It was a magic moment, and you know, it was also, I think, because of 9/11 and stuff like that. It was people. Like I said, that's when my drug issues just ballooned. I think, you know, a lot of people's drug issues ballooned. I think it was seizing life by the hair, and, you know, dragging it down the street because so many big things had just gone down, you know, and I think everybody had a wild hair in their ass, you know.
Yeah, so a double-edged sword. It was an intense moment, and with some good shit happening, and some not so good.
Yeah, but that's
like any time.
Yeah, and that's kind of what made it fun. It was pretty dangerous, you know. People, you know, it was like dangerous, sexy, and wild, you know.
I remember walking into some shows and just like, this has been going on, or, you know, I was just amazed at the talent that I was watching, and it just was nice. Because I had stepped away for a decade, basically, from music and everything, and got involved with other academia and raising a family and all that. And it was just amazing to walk into the midst of that.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that happened was there was some individuals really brought a lot of bands together, like Eric 13 from the Sex Slaves, and you know, Joker 5 Steve was big on getting people together. Queen V was at the time, you know, and then Steve Blush put together that whole act, and we had a group of bands, you know, we had been touring around, so we knew a lot of bands from like DC and up and down the coast, and so, you know, and Three of Cups was like the center, like every night there was a show, and every night after the show everybody went to Three of Cups and blew their brains out, you know, and so there was like a clubhouse, and there was a core group of people, and there was a core group of bands, and every band went and supported each other. So when you played at CBGB's, it was packed front to back. And then when it was all over and it was 2 a.m, everybody went over to Three Cups, you know? And so it was definitely a social scene. It was a music scene. It was an art scene. It was just it was great, right? And you saw it, yeah. And that's where you and I became friends.
Yep. I caught, you know, with your reference, you know, I remember going to the trash bar at the tail end of the scene, you know, around 2008, 2009, when you were with Statues of Liberty, and we'll get to that. But I remember you had the Bullies routinely, and you had that group from, I think it was Philly. What was that?
Low Fast.
You know, and then one or two others that were staples in, you know, and I was like, oh, cool, they're doing the trash bar again. I will be there.
Yeah. Well, you know, I think what happened was, so yeah, you're talking 2008, and so we had become Statues of Liberty. Basically, what Statues of Liberty was Banana Fish Zero, but with Hitomi, who really, for me, was the pinnacle of my playing out. Prince Hal and Hitomi and Statues of Liberty, to me, was the professionalism of the X's, but the insanity of Banana Fish Zero. It takes but without the drugs. And so it was like, that was just my favorite.
That was the Wild West Rocks interview with John Adams. We did that back in January. It's been a while sitting in my computer, but we finally got the first half done. The second half will be out shortly. Stay tuned, it will be out. And one note, if you're going to do an interview with someone, make sure you're well rested and don't do it in the middle of the night. It didn't work for me, that's for sure. But regardless, it's a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it, and the second half will be out shortly.